Fantastic. Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Teachmeet PE This is our second ever event. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. I hope you're having a wonderful Saturday morning at the moment. As I've said, this is our second ever event, so it's really great to have you here. We've got some fantastic speakers lined up, and I'm hoping that it's going to be an excellent Saturday morning. I know some people would have had their first week back from the Easter break and into the summer term. And I know that some people, this would be the end of that Easter break. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a really engaging and enjoyable start to the summer term, get us off on the right foot and make a positive start there. We have got prizes today that are going to be handed out. Anyone who's going to be tuning in on YouTube, obviously we are Twitter based. So what we're asking is that you send in a selfie of yourself tuning in to this live Teachmeet PEicons event with a selfie, and we're going to be picking the best one, and they're going to be getting a £20 Amazon voucher. I would like to say thank you, first of all, to you guys for tuning in, for being here. It's fantastic to have you involved. I'd also like to say a massive thanks to the speakers, those people who are giving up their Saturday morning to share some best practice, provide some CPD. I know that you're really going to enjoy what they're going to be talking about. It's going to be really great stuff. And to our sponsors, these events wouldn't be happening without our sponsors. So we've got Pupil Progress, Wellbe, and Teachers Love Stationery. And we're going to start off, we're going to hear from one of our sponsors before we get into the speakers. So we've got Brett from Pupil Progress. Hi there, Brett. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Morning, Adam. How you doing?
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. For anyone who hasn't seen Pupil Progress, I was actually working with Brett earlier in the week looking at it and what it can bring in terms of data analysis and that tracking of student progress. It's a really unique solution that we've got here. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Brett, and you can talk us through it.
Amazing. Thanks very much. I'm going to take a couple of minutes at the start. The reason for the personal address, number one, I always say it, we couldn't be prouder to sponsor such an incredible event. I think it's ticking on close to 4 years now. Seeing it grow as well. Super proud to be part of that journey now that you're in, I think it's close to 8 subject areas. I'm going to be running one for leadership too. So, and thank you for a prime spot at the start. I'm actually going to share screen because we've got a lot of free stuff. There is a video that we're going to be playing later that actually shows you the software capabilities. But what I want to talk about this morning is actually what we've been doing behind the scenes to support people with the teacher assessed grades process. Now, you should be able to see this screen. What we ran a webinar recently, and I think there was close to 450 teachers that actually came to this webinar. We've released that recording, and it is a 3-step process on how to do and basically execute your teacher assessed grades process from now. I've shared the link with Adam and the Teachmeet team, and they're going to be able to share this throughout the event. Definitely worth checking out. It's only about 28 minutes long, so something you can just put in your schedule. Second thing is we are running another series of webinars, and they start next week. And we've actually got one running on Monday, and it's the first of a 2-part series that is going to support you through the teacher assessed grades process using Pupil Progress. So if you haven't seen the first one, we're going to take it on to the next level. We have access to our trackers at the moment with our grant enabled access I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. 0 cost to the school. So when you actually sign up to this webinar, not only do you get how, so one in week 1, one in week 2, you also get the software that will enable you to execute it too. So the third thing actually, is blogs. We have a series of blogs that you can read. You might be your commute. It might be something you want to just have a look at, just a nice little bit of bedtime reading, all full support for teacher assessed grades. You can access this software at 0 cost to the school for 2 subject areas up until the 31st of August year. So we're not just providing free theory, we're actually providing the opportunity to execute with a software support too, even if we receive the government grant. So even if you just use it for now while you buy yourself some time to set up your own trackers, please use that as a software tool, because it's just, we got that government support to be able to support as many teachers as possible. Where do I find all this information? Really simply, you just go to pupilprogress.com. You can access the grant enabled access by literally clicking create your account. And down the bottom of the site, you'll be able to see all of the blogs and webinars and grant enabled access is all accessible from pupilprogress.com. So again, you know, this personal address was just to let you know what we're doing to support the teaching community right now, because we know it's a tough time. Yeah, thanks again for prime spot, Adam and Tom. Really appreciate it, and hope everyone enjoys it today.
Thank you so much, Brett. If you do get an opportunity, guys, get over and have a little look at pupilprogress.com. Some really great stuff that they're doing over there. Okay, so on to the outline. Obviously, we've got some speakers lined up. We've got Daniel Grimrod first, and Mitch Stepien followed by that. And we've also got big questions. So at about 5 to 10, and again at about 10:15, we're going to be looking at a couple of topics in PE. And if you've got questions that you'd like to ask around those, so it's Key Stage 3 theory content, dripping in that theory content at Key Stage 3 in preparation for Key Stage 4. If you've got any questions around that, either DM the Twitter account or put it in the comments on the YouTube live stream. And again, for tags, teacher assessed grades. We as a panel are going to be talking about best practice, what we're doing in our schools, our sort of thoughts and feelings on them. And hopefully that'll be a really insightful sort of part of this event. We're going to hand over now to Daniel Grimrod. Daniel is founder of Grindstone Education. He's extended SLT at a school in Northwest Essex. He's PE trained. I know that because he trained with me. And he now teaches a lot of maths because of the responsibility that he's been taking on. And that's all around engagement and achievement, isn't it, Daniel?
It is, yeah. So I've kind of taken a bit of sports psychology and moved it into kind of whole school approach. So yeah, I've still got an anchor in PE, even though most of my timetable is maths. So
yeah, and you were a head of department before that, right?
Yeah, so I my career progress was I joined the school where I am now as an NQP +1, went advanced skills teacher, then head of PE, and then kind of moved on into extended SLT. So
fantastic. I'm going to hand over to you now. And if anyone watching wants to ask any questions or anything that you're thinking about while you're watching this presentation, use the hashtag on Twitter, put a comment into the YouTube live stream, and we can put that as a banner across the screen. So keep your eyes peeled for those, Dan. And yeah, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I ran something similar to this actually a couple of weeks ago at my school. About engagement and about what it looks like and how we can use it.
I know that because you trained with me.
Sorry. So the main thing that we were looking at is what actually is engagement. What does it look like? So rather than just PE specific, what does it look like in your lesson, in your classroom? So there's 4 kind of box questions there to ask yourself and to have a look at. So what does it look like? What could cause it? What does disengagement look like? And then what could cause that as well? So we had a little bit of a discussion around it and came up with the idea that actually engagement takes on many, many different forms, but it doesn't have a working definition in education. So wherever you go, whatever you look at, even Ofsted can't quite pin down what they would like out of a lot of education, engagement. So the 2 main definitions that we looked at was an arrangement to do something or go somewhere at a fixed time. So you kind of have an engagement to meet somebody somewhere, or you're engaged because you're busy and occupied. Now, if we kind of combine those 2 things together, when we're looking at it as a lesson, going somewhere or being somewhere at a fixed time, we could kind of take that as the learning objectives, the learning outcomes that we're looking at, and being engaged, being busy and occupied by the learning that's taking place within the classroom as well. So that's kind of the base of where we were and how we built it up. What I did and what I'm kind of presenting to you now is the switch back to a need to achieve versus need to avoid failure. I'm not going to kind of teach you to suck eggs or anything, but the main focus of this is the achievement motivation theory from Atkinson and McClellan. So basically looking at why is it that some people want to achieve? Why is it some people that are desperate to avoid failure instead? And how does that actually directly affect engagement? And looking at it as kind of the self-preservation society where we are at the moment, that a lot of people don't want to see themselves as less than other people, and how we can build that through. So I broke it down into this, which is a bit of a flow chart as to where we want everybody to be. Those students that you can let go, work independently, consistently, and are those that are deemed to be more engaged will be sitting in the need to achieve green part on the right hand side of your screen. Sorry. So they're attributing their performance or their engagement and their learning to internal factors. I can learn this because I am good at this. I can do this because this is me. This is what I'm doing. We then have a group that kind of sits just below that, which is the need to avoid failure. So if they learn, their learning is rather fragile. So they blame the external factors for it. So if we're putting that into the context of a PE lesson, for example, and if they were doing tennis, I was never going to win that anyway because they're a million times better than me. Or I was never going to do that because I didn't see the point in it. So anchoring it in something so that they get a free pass at it, basically. So they can step away from it. Their self doesn't get harmed in what they're doing. And then the furthest one to the right is the learned helplessness, which is where, unfortunately, we have some students that you'll have names come into your head already. In year 11, where I can't do this, I'm never going to be able to do it. No point. I'm not going to bother. And that is the basis of the next bit that we're looking at. So some of the behaviors that they demonstrate. The need to achieve behaviors. So consistently working with independence and with insight and imagination and inquisitiveness. So they're constantly thriving to seek what they can gain out of a situation, what they can do, what they can bring back. Now, the students that we need to try and change and trying to develop are these need to avoid failures that are sitting within these behaviors. And you'll be able to now just identify some of them again. So the excuser, equipment, tired, I can't run that fast today, sir. I can't do the 1500 meters today because I had a late night. I was playing on COD. It's never going to happen. If you're in a classroom, the lad or the lady that doodles, that kind of distracts and takes away. Maybe the attention seeker and the daydreamers. We've all had that Homer Simpson moment where there's a student just staring out the window and looking at the squirrel or something. And then going down, basically wasting time and instigating other things that are around the classroom. So they're the behaviors that you'll sometimes see, and we can kind of accredit those to the need to avoid failure behaviors. And then looking on the far right is their focus and their feedback specifically. And what we need to make sure that we're doing is we turn it, rather than just a class-based support platform, we can put it to a whole school-based platform. And that kind of helps with a little bit along the bottom there. So to move people from the need to avoid failure into the need to achieve, we're looking at removing the external factors. So when they're coming up with excuses to not engage, we're trying to change that and trying to develop it. We're trying to support them, which is pretty much good practice, and then make sure that they can get easy wins. So we're trying to change the conditioning of their learning and their behaviors as we're going through. The next part of it is why these students are there. Obviously, we'll leave the behaviors for the need to achieve. We'll look at the need to avoid failure part again. So they're in there because they attribute it to their external factors. They have a low self-confidence and they don't want to fail or look dumb in front of their peers, basically, which is why on the first slide I put about the self-preservation part of it. They don't want to expose themselves to fear and loss and failure because they haven't got the resilience to build themselves back up again. So it's about making sure that we can support and keep a high pace so they can't think about that self-doubt as they're going through. Okay. So how can we do it and engage and establish that purposeful lesson? So I've left it with two different ways, but they're all anchored around the same part. So displaying at the start of the lesson, whether it's in the changing rooms, if we can ever get back in there for post-COVID, or whether it's at the start of the lesson when we're outside or in the classroom, identifying specifically what it is we're looking at. Can we split those into 3 differentiated learning outcomes? And can they identify where they are now and where they want to be by the end of the lesson? So I've put the key stage 3 levels that we're using at our school at the moment on there. So can they initial in developing at the moment? Can they then change that into securing at the end? And then referring consistently back to them. It's just a good piece of practice, but it can help identify and engage them. If they know they can move themselves from developing into securing within the space of a lesson, which might be quite tough, they can then see that quick and easy win. And then as long as we're referring back to it throughout the lesson, we can then keep that consistent pace and progress going. If you're doing it in a classroom-based session, can they stick it underneath the title of the lesson? Can they put a target of themselves for a learning objective that's leveled in there? And can they try and evidence that throughout the lesson? And then the main part of maintaining engagement from one into the next lesson is about having kind of the plenary aspect of it, if you will. And this is where kind of my maths experience comes in quite a lot, because the one thing that I found with the engagement at the start of a lesson is it's based massively on what they've learned the previous one. So when they had a lesson on algebra, for example, they get it by the end of the lesson, we'd start a new one and they'd forget completely what was happening. So leaving themselves hints and tips at the end of the lesson to bridge that learning gap is massively important. So looking at 2 bullet points, what have I learned today? You can discuss that as a partner in practical PE. And what do I need to remember for next time? But making sure that we're saying, how did I do that? So, for example, I learned how to do a forehand in tennis, but I need to remember to roll my wrist over the ball to create topspin. So that I can have more accuracy and development. So that then, I think we were talking about the key stage 3 theory side of it, that can influence that really, really quickly. So making sure they have that consistent application of what they've learned, then they come back to it. So that's normally written in their books with me in maths or in theory lessons. And then in practical lessons, they'll make a little note of it somewhere in their diary or kind of save it somewhere. We're lucky we have like little diaries and stuff that they can use, so they can stick it in there. And then the 3 points basically at the end. So in that share in the identified purpose, so making sure that they can engage with it because they know where the lesson's going. Humanizing it, so making sure that you are making it comfortable and confident for them so they're able to develop it, and then maintain their interest throughout. It's just kind of standard teaching practice, but it gives you the idea of why it's important that it happens. So the 3 takeaway ideas: try and remove as many external factors as you possibly can, and your personality professionally can do that as best as possible. Sharing the intent and referring to it consistently, and then recapping so you can bridge that and stop a drop in engagement kind of between the 2 lessons.
Fantastic.
So if anybody's got any questions, obviously I'm going to be trawling through Twitter and stuff later anyway, so tag me in it. I think my stuff's along the bottom, but also use the Teachmeet hashtag as well.
Thank you so much, Dan. Certainly when you're saying at the start about pupils coming to mind,
yeah,
straight away you can put them into boxes, can't you, where your different students fall. And it's really interesting to think about actually just practical strategies that you can use to try and shift them along and get them into that need to achieve section, if you like. Get them
exactly. And that's like, it's the basis of understanding why they might be in a certain part of that spectrum.
Yeah. Fantastic. And we'll quickly say, so you're developing Teacher Peloton as well, which is a cycling group.
Yeah, so myself and 2 other friends from uni, you know yourself, Adam, we got back into cycling during lockdown 1. We then find that physically we were benefiting, but we weren't actually engaging too much socially with other people. It was quite isolating. So we've set it up on Instagram and Strava and Twitter and Facebook so that actually we can start interacting, and we're opening it up to members and things as well. So we're having meetups, and we can meet up and kind of go out for a ride and have some coffee and cake as well.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dan. Great to hear from you. That was great stuff.
Cheers, thank you.
Cool. To anyone who's tuning in, just to remind you, please use the hashtag Teachmeet PEicons, so TMPEicons. If you want the chance of winning a £20 Amazon voucher, get a selfie on there. We'll be picking someone. And as well, one of our sponsors, Teachers Love Stationery, are giving away free reward sticker packs as well. So we're going to be picking 3 sort of runners up for that as well to receive a prize from Teachers Love Stationery. We're going to be hearing from Mitch Stepien next, who's going to be talking about accelerating progress. Mitch is a PE teacher. He's a head of year 9 as well in Hertfordshire, an AQA GCSE specialist. This is what it's all based around. But the concept that Mitch, that you put together, I've seen it firsthand. I think it's absolutely awesome. And you're going to be telling us about that this morning. I will hand over to you without further ado, Mitch.
Cool. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As Adam mentions, I'm going to be looking, just talking about accelerating progress, and something which I've been which I've made and kind of had a look into to help my GCSE PE students in particular. Last lockdown, the first lockdown that we did have, I was looking at ways before I took a year 10 group in September of ways that I could have a knowledge checklist, just so students are aware basically what to expect in each chapter. And it's one of those things where I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but from what I was looking for online, and there are different versions of this, there wasn't anything that I took my eye that had a very student-friendly breakdown with some self-assessment, with some reference to an AQA book, which is what I've put together. So as you can see from the resource, it is, I try to make it be as student-friendly as possible so students are confident with the content which we're learning in lessons. So we've got some I can statements, some very simple structured sentences that pupils can reflect on whether or no that if they have their knowledge to actually apply that into an exam. And obviously you can see to the side of that, a little bit of self-assessment, just the element of ticking so they can track their own progress. Am I confident with this? How confident do I feel like I'm going through this? I think a key element which I wanted to include was, because I used the Physical Education AQA GCSE PE book, Kirk Bisley, because I teach through that book, through the book, and a lot of the content which is delivered, I thought it would be good to create reference points for the page numbers. So if there were any times that students were in a lesson and they're going through their statements and the knowledge checklist, they could actually directly say, oh, actually, I'm not fully confident in that. Let's go straight to page 9, for example. If they're looking at the different types of joint, they could go to the page and they could instantly have that for them. Just trying to make it as easy as possible so then they could actually do that revision, check up on something that they didn't know. And it does work as a roadmap kind of moving forward. I know that there are lots of different roadmaps that are available that are maybe a little bit less wordy, but my students, when they're using it at the moment, they know that if we're on the skeletal system, they know in a couple of weeks we're moving on to the muscular system, and they've got this stuck in their books every time we move on to a new chapter, so they can see what to expect coming up. Success so far. So I have been using this since September, and I've actually found it to be a really effective starter activity. So we always talk about this element of retrieval practice and going over things from previous lessons and to ensure there's that retention of information. The way that I've done it has been quite ad lib actually, but having basically students in their kind of learning teams, you know, with the person sitting next to you, go through the statements for the skeletal system, and can you have that dialogue going through each one of them, trying to name all the different bones in the body. And it's actually been a really useful activity because, like I said, with regards to the statements that I've made, they're very concise, and because a lot of the AQA GCSE PE paper is kind of content driven, they must know this information and it's quite science based. It does actually work really well. And then obviously from there, going around listening to the conversations is very useful for myself as well. Also been looking into kind of student voice, and I have done some questionnaires in lessons looking at things like this, and students generally have said they've been really, really useful when they are revising. So for example, I've given my students a couple of quizzes to do, which they are going to be doing in next Tuesday's lesson, and they're on the respiratory system and the CV system. They know that if they go through those statements that are on the blue and the yellow sections there, they're going to be put in good stead for that test. So it's obviously making it as simple as possible, as easy as possible, so they can revise and they know exactly what 5 things do I really need to know, what are the 5 kind of key nuggets of information. And the other thing which I think has been working really well is stretching the more able student. So it's really allowing them to get ahead, do some independent studying for those that might be a little bit ahead of the game. They've done that extension task in class. You might just say, right, well, we haven't done effects of exercise yet. We're going to be covering that next week. Here's the textbook. All the information is on page 28 and 29, as you can see from the bottom. Have a little look through. Let's see if you can kind of get ahead of the game. It is a really good tool that I've actually found is great for stretching the high ability students. And I guess the elephant in the room at the moment is what we've all been worrying about. I guess it's that whole idea of there have unfortunately been some gaps in their learning, and how can we guarantee that students really haven't missed out on their education? And obviously that was one of my worries, taking my GCSE group through. And I wanted to make it as easy as possible for students to catch up on any lessons they've missed, because naturally I can't imagine what it must be like for a student to have gone through 3 months of working from home with all the other lessons that they've got to do as well. I have obviously done the kind of the parts of usual practice by making sure that I'm uploading narrated PowerPoints onto Google Classroom, and there's recorded live lessons, and there's my Nearpod lessons that I was using, etc. But I still wasn't fully happy that I've done everything that I could to make sure that it was easy for them to kind of go back and actually look at something that maybe they weren't that confident in. So what I decided to do is I started to think about using supporting videos using the checklist as well, that basically teach in kind of in a nutshell, a kind of 5 to 10 minute video explaining the key content for each of the I can statements for the kind of different subtopics. I know that there are different ways about this, and some people might say, well, you could just put a link to a YouTube video where some other random person does it online. And I did think about doing that, but I believe that I teach differently, and same as everyone's got their own teaching style, and this is directed to my students in particular. I wanted to make it personalized so that when we do teach the skeletal system, the way that I teach it in the QR code, which is on the video there, is exactly the same as I would in lesson. It's just a really condensed version, using the same terminology that I would use, and the same kind of personality to make it really kind of approachable for them to use. And one thing that I can always count on, especially for my group, and this might not be the same for every group, is that my group always have their phones on them. So I guess the fact that they have their phones on them, this would make it really easy for them to access videos for anything they've missed, any questions they've had at any time. And actually getting around to it, I didn't think it was going to be particularly difficult, and it didn't manage to be. I did manage to find some different ways of kind of uploading this. And the way I went about it is I essentially made some mini PowerPoints, which I kind of had the key information. So as you can see from the previous slide, I had the skeletal system up there, and I'm talking through all the different bones and explaining stuff, etc. And then I recorded myself teaching it for 10 minutes. I uploaded the video, which I just put to my Google Drive. I managed to find a website, so that website there, Atom Earl, there are a few different ones out there that you don't have to pay for. I was able to share my Google Drive, make a QR code for that, and then students were able to, or are able to, use their phones to access that video in a snapshot very quickly, so they can actually see the content of that video. And I've tried it in class. It does work. It does work with all different types of phones. And like I said, I have introduced it over the kind of last month or so. Students have got their phones out, they've got their QR codes, and they can have that checklist in front of them. If it's a revision lesson, you know, get your phone out, go over that QR code, and you can watch that 10-minute video of me teaching the skeletal system, for example. And it has actually worked really well. Quite useful as well when you are sharing stuff using this particular website. Obviously with Google Drive, you can restrict it so who can view it. So you can restrict it to just the school domain, or everyone can view it, the same as Google Drive normally. And then obviously you get a lovely QR code, and you can just put that next to the checklist as well. And I guess the 3 ways which I think it can be used is, I guess the first one comes down to revision. So obviously going over that retrieval practice, and students can just get their phones out, have what I think is a simple resource, go over a QR code, and watch a very simple video which explains the kind of the key areas of a chapter and some certain topics. I think it's been a really beneficial tool, and students have said that they've actually really enjoyed using it, and it does just make sense. I didn't want students to feel like sometimes that they have to go on their computer, they have to log on, they have to find this, this, and this. But to get their phones up and look at a QR code, I think that was quite a simple idea, which they have actually bought into, and they've enjoyed watching the videos and going over content. The second one I said, which was the elephant in the room, the filling gaps in the learning. I know that I've covered 3 different subtopics over the last couple of months in a certain chapter. And I know that some students have generally missed out, and they haven't maybe done as many live listens as they should have. But as I said, it's nothing that is unexpected, because it must be incredibly difficult. So we have obviously covered different stuff in lessons, but they have that ability to, well, I know that I missed these subtopics. I could technically catch up all of them subtopics in probably about a 20-minute video, watch that video for 5-10 minutes, that one and that one. And then they'd be up to speed and at least have a baseline level of knowledge which they can work on. And then the same thing that I've mentioned already, the stretching challenge. Students are able to get ahead and actually challenge themselves if they feel like, or if I feel like they need pushing a little bit more. So moving them on, it could be a homework task. Why don't you have a look at that QR code, make some notes on some of the stuff in that subtopic. We're going to be covering it in a few weeks. So that's how it can be used. And I was still thinking, again, I was thinking of evolving. I was like, well, it's going very well. I like the idea that they've got the content that they can look at, but well, if they can't apply their knowledge, it's obviously next to useless. So using Exam Pro, which I'm sure quite a lot of people use, so you can obviously got the previous exam papers on there. I thought it'd be quite a good idea to then, same again, create another QR code, but this time using Exam Pro with the questions, which are now all together in one document. So I used the exact same premise of uploading a Word document, to Google Drive, which had loads of past paper questions. And obviously the example you can see on your screen is for the skeletal system. And we've got the past paper questions on there. We've got the mark scheme on there. And it was the same idea of upload to Google Drive, use a website to make a QR code. And then the QR code has everything on there from the Google Drive so students can access this. Obviously,
about 30 seconds, Mitch.
Yeah, not as ideal on obviously on a phone, but it is an idea that works, and obviously they can still access it on their Google as well. And then the next steps for me, this is what I'm going to work towards, but it just takes a little bit more planning. I'm going to get every student a key ring with all of the QR codes on for Teach Me, which would be me teaching the video for the content in a little square, and then a Test Me, so they could access all of the previous questions on there, including the mark schemes, in just one key ring as a revision tool to teach the whole 2-year course.
Like that, Teach Me, Test Me. What you all know, Mitch, I like to call sort of the key parts of each topic the bread and butter. I always refer to it to the students. Here's the bread and butter of anatomy and physiology. Here's the bread and butter of whatever it may be. So having that reassures students, doesn't it? And it gives them that focus point if they don't know where to start. Thinking about what Dan was just talking about with our NAC and NAF. Those that want to avoid failure, well, I don't know where to start. Well, here you go. Here is the place to start.
And I think that's been my selling point as well. Like, you know, if I understand opening a book and looking at page 72 is easier said than done. This is a nice little 5-minute video that will give you the bread and butter of the subtopic. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much, Mitch. Certainly your GCSE PE students have got no reason to be failing at all. Everything is there for them on a plate. They know exactly what they need to do. So that's fantastic. Cool. Right. We're going to go into a big question now. So if I could have the rest of the speakers onto the screen. Fantastic. Hi, we've got Scott and Jodie joining us. They're going to be speaking later on in the event, but they're coming forward for this part. So the big question, we want to talk a little bit about theory at Key Stage 3. So that's just an open question to the panel. What do you do at your school? Do you do anything? Do you just keep it purely practical, or how are we drip feeding in theory? Or I know that some schools will have theory booklets or theory specific lessons at Key Stage 3 to really emphasize it and build that foundation to build upon in Key Stage 4. Is there anyone who wants to jump in straight away? What do we do for this at our schools?
I'll go for it.
Go on, Jodie.
So in a weird way, lockdowns kind of worked really well for us in that all we did for our kind of Key Stage 3, as well as getting them to do practical things as well, was focusing on the GCSE content. So we managed to get through loads and loads and lessons worth of components of fitness, methods of training. So they know that stuff now, and we made them engage in lessons. So we linked it into a practical, you know, they'd test a component of fitness, they'd learn and answer questions about it. So it has put us in a really good position. Now we've come back because they know that content, and we continue to question them with it. And ours is quite basic really, in that just in our schemes of work, there's links to theory content for every single sport, every single lesson. So we've got that option to kind of dip in and out where we kind of see best fit.
Definitely, that is one option, isn't it? People or departments rather in their schemes of learning will have links to keywords or key topics just to discuss with the students, just to bring to the forefront of students' minds when they're doing the practical sessions. Scott, what about you?
Yeah, we decided to look at it from a progressive element. So they do pick it up in year 7, 8 and 9, and they look at various aspects such as the skeletal system through one topic, and then they might look at short-term exercise that's built up and developed and progress within the actual practical lessons. We don't run theory lessons as such. We drip feed it into practical lessons. We think it's really important to develop that knowledge and understanding, which will help them be better practically as well. And then that's tested as well through our homework system, which we just use a low stakes quiz, which is self-marks, and the pupils do. It's only 10 questions, so it's not onerous on the staff to mark it or anything, but it just makes sure that we're continuously checking their knowledge and understanding, and it just develops throughout the key stage.
So they have theory homework throughout Key Stage 3.
Yeah.
And is that weekly?
No, just 1.5 term, just 10 questions a half term, just to check on what they've remembered and recalled from our lessons that we just did.
And I can imagine your students who, when students turn up in year 7, we know who our GCSE students are going to be almost immediately. You can just tell, you get that vibe from them. I imagine those students absolutely buzz off it and are really, really keen for those pieces of homework.
Yeah, it's something we started about 3 years ago now, obviously prior to all the curriculum changes which I'm going to discuss, and we looked at the 5-year GCSE and so on. But those pupils now studying GCSE PE saying it's really helped them. We did a pupil voice and they said that drip feed and low stakes questions in there has really helped them obviously understand it when they uptake GCSE PE at Key Stage 4.
Yeah, they've got that little prior exposure, haven't they? Mitch, what about you?
So this year, the school that I'm at, we're doing things a little bit different. And rather than teaching, obviously, sometimes we do like health-related fitness as a unit of work that we have in Key Stage 3 and students look at the methods of training. We've currently got 5 lessons a fortnight for year 7, 8 and 9. And one of the 5, for year 7 and 8 at least, there is kind of a focus on fitness, which is looking at the components of fitness, kind of looking at the types of training, etc. But it's linked to the sports. And obviously, same as what basically both of these have been saying, that it's always linking to the bigger picture and obviously just trying to keep it as practical as possible. We do have elements of some kind of small books that we work through. So when we looked recently, we've looked at fitness testing. For example, we're looking at badminton. An important component of fitness for badminton is agility. So we do the Illinois agility test, and we're obviously linking that to the fact of, well, agility is really important for badminton, and obviously slowly drip feeding the fact in that for those students that will be taking GCSE PE, they've actually done the test, they know about it 2 years prior to the beginning in year 10.
Yeah. Awesome. I certainly, when I was head of PE, I set up a strategy in which students were doing fitness testing each term. And I know that it's a bit of a contentious subject in PE, and certainly I know University of Bedfordshire are not massive advocates of fitness testing at Key Stage 3. They think that it can turn students off. I think if it's done in the right way, in the right climate, the right environment, it can really engage students. And that ties in beautifully with your components of fitness, and obviously fitness testing being part of GCSE and BTEC syllabus. It's information that they need to know, and having done that throughout Key Stage 3, when they get to Key Stage 4, they know it, they're confident with it, they've done it, they've lived it, and I found that really helps. And like you were saying, Scott, about asking students, has that helped? The feedback received is absolutely fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We're now going to have a short video before we go to Jodie. So one of our sponsors, Wellbe, it's focusing on helping schools to take action and systemize the improving of well-being of staff. Mark Solomon is the lead there. He's encouraging people to speak to decision makers in your school to look at this and to book a demo on Wellbe. And we've got a demonstration video of how it works coming up now.
Wellbe is a systemised solution which helps improve staff well-being and build it into your school culture. You can see where you are now and plan where you want to be. Using the evidence-based survey, the Health and Safety Executives Indicator tool, you can see your staff members' scores in your online dashboard. This shares a full report including analysis, benchmarks and heat maps. Use our suggested priority actions, which means it's much easier and faster to take positive steps. Staff also share their comments, providing further insight into actions needed, and you're able to respond to them anonymously, creating greater engagement. Wellbe allows you to easily share your results with staff and governors using a PowerPoint presentation which you can easily download. You can book a results review call with a wellbeing expert and let us help you set the right goals and actions to achieve the outcomes you need. With Wellbe Voice, you can follow up on post-survey actions and track progress over the next 12 months. You can also use it for anything else, where staff anonymity will help. For example, with consultations or following a change. Send staff members a message, ask a question or seek feedback. It's as easy as sending an email. The one difference being, it is an anonymous conversation. You can invite all staff to take part or groups as little as 8. This means that you only need to invite relevant staff, such as those affected by the changes you've made. This might be teachers, support staff, middle leaders, teaching assistants, or any group of staff in your school. You choose the titles you use. Staff receive their invitation by email, click on the button to respond through a web page. Only they see and are able to send you their feedback. You see this in your school dashboard, where you can read and choose to respond if you wish. You can set up multiple users across your leadership team to share workload and enable others to seek feedback from their team. It really is that easy. Our online user guides make sure Wellbe Survey and Voice are quick and easy to use. Our online toolkit will help accelerate your progress and ensure you reach the outcomes you need. The available resources are targeted at those areas we know will build your foundations and have the biggest impact on staff well-being, and include a staff well-being policy and strategy template, 12 competencies proven to prevent and reduce staff stress, and the ability to self-assess against these through 4 online questionnaires. This means that all your leaders will have a high awareness of those behaviours that will make well-being simply part of your everyday culture. Online training in 5 of the key behaviours that will make the biggest difference in your school. Add 12 months of ongoing remote support through email, phone or video call, and systemize how you improve the well-being and performance of your staff. Start today and register for your account, or book a full demonstration.
There we go. Wellbe. If you're interested, get onto the website, have a little look. Just a quick reminder, if you are tuning in, if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag TMPEicons. Send us in a selfie of you tuning in and you could win a £20 Amazon voucher. We've also got some Teacher Love stationery prizes to hand out as well. We're going to hear from Jodie now, and this is the Under the Spotlight section of the event, where we look at a practical subject. And Jodie is a netball specialist. She plays netball for Elmdon. She's lead on Key Stage 3 PP, and she's also a head of house. If she's going to be brought in, that would be fantastic. And she's going to be talking about netball and some practical strategies with netball. How you doing, Jodie? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. Key Stage 3 PP lead. That's interesting.
Yep. So I only started. Well, I started this in September. I used to be gifted and talented, so in charge of more able, and they've moved me up to Key Stage 3 Pupil Premium. Obviously, I haven't been able to do that much with it at the moment, but I'm in charge of it again next year. So that would be something nice to get stuck in with.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, cool. I'll hand over to you, and let's hear about some netball.
Thank you. Okay, so Under the Spotlight netball is what I'll be talking through today. So why netball? So obviously it's an obvious one for kind of a female to do under the spotlight on, but it is the most popular female sport in the UK and a large part of the PE curriculum. It's interesting because everyone teaches netball differently, but it is really easy, and I'm guilty of it as well, to fall into that trap of teaching just the same monotonous lessons. So you do your passing lesson, you do your footwork lesson. And it's just always really useful to refresh our practice. As Adam said, I've continued to play netball since I was at school, so it is kind of my specialist area, but actually it is one of my least favourite sports to teach, and that is kind of due to, I think we'll all get this as PE teachers, you can love teaching your specialism, but you can absolutely despise it at times as well, because it can be so frustrating because you know what you want it to look like and what skill level you want to get the students to. That doesn't always transpire. But in a way, it's worked in my favour because I have looked at new ways of teaching things and looking at those frustrations. And I've just got a few images here. Now, these are younger students, but it kind of gets the idea across that I wanted. So just the first picture. So we've got 7 students in this one area of the court, so half of our netball team. Another one, we've got 7 students chasing after one ball. This is my favourite image. You just got them standing there, hands in the air, praying somehow that that ball is going to go into their hands. And that picture just kind of does it for me, really. That is what a lot of netball lessons can end up looking like. And at times I'll look onto the netball court and this is how I feel the netball lesson is going. So I've got thousands of them around the ball. There's a ball in the middle of there somewhere, and they're all just standing still, not moving and expecting that that ball is somehow going to get to them. So that this is kind of leading on to what I'm looking at. These are my frustrations within teaching netball. So I'm going to be looking at the adoption of a passing sequence to develop the understanding or the use of space. And it is really something quite simple, but it does work really well. And I've seen kind of excellent outcomes in some of my lessons. So just a few questions here for us to think about. How many times in a netball lesson or any invasion game do we say the term spread out? So we shout spread out, we might even stop the game, get them to take 3 steps back. I've done it before. And then 5 seconds later, they're all around the ball again. And they absolutely have no concept, some of them, of spreading out. So I put there, do students even know how to spread out? Do they know what we mean when we say that? What is more important, mastering a skill in isolation or actually understanding the game? So a lot of the specifications at our GCSE level, we have our skills in isolation and we have our application of skills, but actually it's that application of skills where they are picking up the most marks. That's what makes them the most successful player. Should we be focusing on that more than just them mastering the skill in isolation? And finally, always an interesting thing to think about, a skill-based lesson or games for understanding. And what I'm going to show you today is more of a games for understanding, but with a little bit of skill at the start. So a really simple drill just to kind of get started, and this is just a simple movement drill. So the aim of this drill is to drive out to receive the ball. So really simply, the ball will start with our goalkeeper. Our goal defence will drive out to receive the ball. Wing defence will drive out all the way down to goal shooter. Those of us that teach a lot of netball will kind of know in a dream world from a backline pass, it would go all the way from goalkeeper to goal shooter. So this is why we set it up in that way. So key terms that this can develop is driving, timing, movement, footwork, passing. So there's loads of skills involved in this. However, it can be taught at any lesson. So as I say, simple, driving out to the side. And we'd only spend a couple of minutes on that because it is quite a simple drill. But then we would look at progressing this relatively quick into this passing sequence that I mentioned at the start. So the passing sequence that we want to look at implementing is this idea of short, short, long. So we have a short pass, and then a long pass. And the drill works in the exact same way, but now we've got students moving in different directions in order to kind of follow this sequence. If we kind of think of our typical girls, if we think of them at a GCSE lesson level as well, when we're teaching them theory, they love to follow things, they love like an acronym. They love a rhyme. They love something to help them remember things from a revision point of view. And we know that, so why aren't we doing that kind of at a practical level as well? And your girls that love leadership, love kind of taking charge, your captains, when you include something like this, you'll hear them saying in the lesson, they'll be like short, short, long. They'll be like, right, this needs to be a longer pass. And it really kind of brings out your leaders there. So it works really well. So if I just show you in a moment what that's going to look like. But it's getting them to understand that that short pass isn't, we want it to go in one of 4 directions really. So we either have, if we just look at this visual here, it goes directly in front, directly to either side, or it can go behind. And we want to kind of avoid this short diagonal ball at this level when we're teaching it. We do want that kind of square direction to the side or in front. And our long pass, we do want that to be a diagonal into another channel. So if our netball court is split into our 3 channels, we want that diagonal long pass to be going into a different channel. And we do want to avoid those straight long passes that students tend to use as well. So starting with goalkeeper again, our goal defence will drive out for our first short pass. Wing defence will go out for our next short pass. And then our centre will drive in the other direction to a different channel for our diagonal long pass. We'll then start the sequence again. So we'll do our short, short, and into our long. And there's loads of things you can do with this. I personally try and get into our match play as quick as possible so we can implement it into that. But you could do it that you add in another team and you have defenders there. You might do that with a more able group for an extra challenge. You could do it that goal shooter and goal attack work together and they can be shooting into the netball hoop, anything. But there's lots of options. But as I say, they will pick up this idea of this short, long relatively quick. And then the final stage, as I say, I'm thinking about this idea of games for understanding, getting them to apply these skills as quick as they can. We would get into a gameplay. Now, with the focus still being this passing sequence, so getting them to understand that at every point in the game, as much as possible, because obviously it doesn't always work and go to plan, but we want to try and stick to that passing sequence. And there are loads of benefits that I've seen for match play of using this passing sequence. So it's set plays. We try and deliver and teach lessons on set plays. It's always a little bit harder to set up, but it's, previous lessons I've done on set plays, I'm telling them where I want that next pass to go. And actually, if they can understand this short, long, that is always our set play. So if we were working from a centre pass, for example, we'd have that first pass, which would be a short pass. And ideally, we want that next pass to be a short pass. And once they understand that sequence, it will really benefit their set plays. Students know exactly where the ball should be going, therefore they can drive into that position. If we've got this that I showed you before, there are 4 possible options for our short pass. Therefore, there should not be one student in the same space. They should all be spread out at one of these 4 possible options or someone driving for that long pass. Makes them more prepared for a turnover. I'm guilty of this when I play. If you make an interception, you want to get that ball back out as quick as possible. But if we make that interception, we make that turnover, we've got the ball and we want to start that with a short pass. And it just ignites further positional conversation. So once they've got this idea of spreading out and using this passing sequence, not being in the same space, that's where you can start to look at specific positional conversations. So just having a look at, my school is GCSE EdXL. And this is straight from the specification for netball. So looking at how something like this will directly link into our specification. So contribution to open play. So it hits that one straight away in attack and defence. Contribution to set play / moves, backline passes, centre passes, throwing attack and defence. Again, it hits that one. Decision making. So you'd be looking at, is this player using the correct pass at the correct time? What's their movement like? These are the type of things we want to see. Communication and influence on a team. As I said, your leaders, your captains will straight away, you'll hear them talking about these passes in your lessons, and it's a really positive thing to see. And finally, again, it links into applying the team strategy in open play and set play. So there's loads of reasons how this works really, really well in your lesson and why it's something we should look at using in our netball lessons. And I'm just finishing with, so why? So from experience, girls have less understanding of how to appropriately use space in invasion games. So if we think, if I compare me and my brother, so my brother started playing football probably at the age of 3. I didn't play my first invasion game probably until I was in year 7, so probably till year 11. So I haven't picked up that idea of spacing and movement, whereas boys seem to be picking it up much younger. The passing sequence can be implemented from year 7 to 11. So I've done it with year 7s, it works great. I've done it with year 11s, also works great. Once you have the movement, it's much easier to master the other basic skills. If they're all spread out and the netball court looks how we want it to look, we can then focus on the other skills. And more than ever, girls are being assessed in other invasion games at GCSE level. So we do a lot of handball at school, and we do assess a lot of our GCSE students in handball. So this idea of movement and getting them to understand movement within the game really just benefits our other invasion games as well. And that is everything from me, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Jodie. That was excellent. That was really good. I like not leaving it down to chance and teaching them the routine, the structure, how to move. And one of your first slides about the different things that you can work on within that short, long. So the timing, the footwork, the fact that that drill is not just about getting into space. It's bringing in all of those other elements as well. That was really, really good, and certainly can 100% relate to that. The ball's in there somewhere. I don't know where it is. There's just a crowd of bodies. And like you say, well, like I just said, it's taking the chance out, isn't it? It's actually putting that structure in place of this is how we do it and building upon that. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Jodie. Really, really useful. Awesome. We're going to go back into another big question now. So if I could have Scott and Mitch back.
Now,
or we can go to a pupil progress video. That's not a problem. Let's go pupil progress first, and then we'll go into the big question on tags. Cool.
As an XP teacher, I actually designed this system to support with all the complex calculations that are required across all of the core units, and it will calculate the grade exactly as the exam board calculates the grade. All of this is up to date with current changes made as a result of COVID. All grades are calculated using the very latest grade boundaries, where you can also adjust with a percentage challenge. All of our trackers are also incredibly versatile. Here is an example of adding a test at question level analysis, being able to tag a specific question against a specific topic area. When we add the marks, it will update the topic summary automatically, telling you which areas of the course are going well and which require some improvement. We have even uploaded previously published papers at question level analysis so that you don't have to go through and create this yourself. Every question is tagged against the specific topic area, so again it all feeds through into that really useful topic summary area. Now, one of the most talked about and probably the most powerful features of our software is the ability to download an individual student report. It gives students ownership, it makes them feel empowered, it provides them the detail they need to feel motivated to achieve the grades that they should be achieving. Now, one of the reasons this system benefits PE teachers quite uniquely is we know that you actually deliver quite a large variety of qualifications. Our system actually enables you to track progress for every qualification you are delivering, whether it's GCSE, A-Level, OCR Cambridge Nationals. Here is an example of a BTEC tracker where every single tracker is bespoke to meet the needs of the course. Here is an example of the OCR Cambridge Nationals. Again, every report is completely bespoke to the course being delivered. This also pulls through all of your data as a department summary, so you have full transparency of how students are performing across all classes across your faculty. And this is all presented in a really easy to use format, ready for any meetings or discussions. Now, for those of you with whole school responsibility, we've actually developed the ability to pull all of that data from all trackers into one central place, giving you eyes and transparency over the grades that students are working at across all subject areas and all qualifications. This also includes the ability to do a key stage 4 grade analysis. This will calculate the P8 and A8 score for each individual student, for each department area, and therefore for the whole entire school. To access this system at zero cost to the school up until the 31st of August, simply visit pupilprogress.com, click create account. There on the 4th step, you'll be able to select your 2 subject areas for your grant enabled access.
There we go, pupil progress. Okay, we're going to go back into the big question now. So certainly a hot topic in education at the moment, teacher assessed grades, tags. What are we doing in our schools? I certainly know from speaking to other local schools, it varies so much. There's so many different interpretations of the process and so many different models that you could potentially follow. Let's go, Mitch. What's going on over at your school with regards to this in PE?
So because I've got a year 10 group, it's another member of staff sorting out the year 11 stuff. But with regards to AQA, GCSE, PE, it's the 5 assessed pieces of work that are kind of being put forward, and students are able to reply to their feedback using green pens after it's been marked, and then that's going to be kind of cross-moderated between departments and other schools as well. So I know that some of the work that, so for example, a chapter 1 mock paper that was done in year 10 is being used as one piece of evidence, and the students have had a chance to kind of give feedback on that after they've got some feedback and it's moved on. Whereas I know that there have just been some single chapter exams that are going to be taking place and have taken place over the last kind of few weeks of, okay, you're going to sit at chapter 4, so the sports psychology, giving students forewarning, kind of, a bit of guidance on the chapter, and then they have to do that, and that's going to be another piece of work which we're assessing and then using as a piece of evidence as well going forward.
And in terms of those, so you've just mentioned sports psychology, is that going to be the newly released assessment material, or is that on previous exam questions?
I think that's just on previous exam questions. So I know that there obviously has been some new questions which have been released, and it's kind of a combination just to get a line of best fit so we can give, I guess, the most accurate grade to as possible. So to ensure that it's fair and it's reliable and all students get the best chance, I guess.
And are they doing that in classes or in like exam conditions in the hall, or?
It is in class, exam conditions, but in a classroom. So the same kind of principle. Students have their test paper, and going through the motions of a normal exam, but it's not necessarily in the hall, because I guess the logistics of that at the moment with the whole of year 11 would be very difficult with obviously everything that's been going on. So I think all subjects at my school have been doing it in classroom.
Cool. Let's go to you, Jodie. And could you mention something about practical? What's going on with your school and the practical element of GCSE PE?
So, I mean, we're in quite a good position where if they do decide that they want to see some practical evidence, we've got a lot recorded already. So students that do sports outside of school, so we've got a couple of skiers, swimmers, things like that. We managed to get all that prepared already, so we've got all that to kind of go ahead if we need it. But I mean, ours is quite simple, really, the process that we're doing for the teachers' test grade. So we've got 2 weeks when we go back to school on Monday, and then students will be doing a controlled assessment in each subject area, which will be one for EdExcel, which is our exam board. They would normally have 2 exams, but they'd just be doing 1 exam. So we've selected, I think we've chosen 6 topics across the 2 papers, which students know to revise, and then the questions will be a combination of those in there. EdExcel have released some kind of questions and things like that, but we think we're going to put together kind of our own based on old past papers.
And are you assessing the full content of the specification, or is that being modified slightly?
Yeah, so definitely modified. And I mean, as I said before, we're in a really good position. So our trackers are really up to date. We've got loads of mock papers, things from last year, things from the year before, since they started, because we do a 3-year GCSE with the current year 11s. So it will be a combination of everything. So actually this last exam that they'll be doing is kind of like one of 8 different assessments that they've already done.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm in a similar position where we've got a lot of historic data, topic tests, little mini assessments that have gone on throughout that have been completely tracked, are very clear. We haven't got lots of video evidence, unfortunately, but we've got a very clear tracker in which all of their practical performances have been tracked. So that's really, really useful. And that's, we're really benefiting from that sort of robust process that we've had in place from the start of the GCSE course. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, we're in a pretty strong position, really. We managed to finish the content of all the theoretical aspects. So we're trying to keep it as fair and as robust as possible for all the pupils. So we are going to sit actually, our PE exams that obviously they didn't manage to sit throughout the lockdown. And also we did have quite a lot of video evidence collated. We do the OCR specification, and we also finished our AEP, the coursework elements. So all 3 components are there. Obviously, the large part is the moderation regarding the practical lives, and we are actually doing that under sort of controlled assessment conditions, whereby we're running a football moderation and doing it as accurate as we possibly can. Obviously, giving the pupils chance at present to, develop themselves and get back into playing sport and so on before we actually do those aspects. But yeah, we're still going to do it as close to the real thing as possible, really, because we feel like they're in a good position to do so.
Is that an internal moderation, or will there be external other schools involved as well?
At present, it's internal. I've offered it out to our cluster schools. I do actually moderate for OCR, so I feel like I'm in a good position to do that along with my colleagues, and we'll cross-moderate and so on. And similar, one of my colleagues marked one of the papers. She's marking all that paper, so it's fair. And obviously, I will then, moderate a sample of those. So, it is really fair and robust, we feel. We're in a good position to do that for the pupils.
It's the sort of can of worms that I'm going to open, though, is obviously students haven't played sport consistently for a couple of seasons now. And so when we are moderating, when we're looking at them, that has got to be considered, hasn't it? Just where they are, the teenage years, your development in sport has been completely halted. And it should be no easier or no difficult this year to achieve the grade that they would have got if COVID had never happened. And so that's a really tricky thing to consider, isn't it? Practically what's the difference that I'm seeing in front of me in comparison to, that parallel universe where COVID didn't happen and they'd just progressed and played sport throughout that time. A really tricky thing, isn't it? And schools are going to be doing it so differently, and there is no correct answer here, but the impossible challenge, really, I feel. Cool. Thank you so much for your input, guys. We're going to keep Scott on. So, Scott, as you've said, you're an OCR moderator. You're a head of faculty for PE, senior lead practitioner, NQT and ITT professional mentor, an SLE. You've got lots going on, and you're going to talk a little bit about PE curriculum planning. So looking forward to hearing about this. Your mic's a little bit intermittent, but we'll go with it. We'll see if we can get through. And I'll hand straight over to you, Scott. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we can see my screen there. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about PE curriculum. So the 3 aspects, obviously it's a large part here that also I'm going to look at in 10 minutes. So we've got the recovery curriculum, look at a little bit of the 3 I's and Ofsted, and then how I think you can have a look at planning your curriculum. So you'll know from the press, there's lots of newspaper articles and headings out there about what we're doing for PE curriculum, which has a huge impact on all staff, but really as us as PE staff, which people have alluded to, some pupils who've not played sport now for well over 12 months, we've really got to take that into consideration. So I looked at a couple of papers that are out there. This one I find is really quite relevant to us in PE, and it's about the recovery curriculum. Looked at 5 different levers there, different aspects that we can look at. And the first one is relationships. The fact that these pupils haven't had relationships and they haven't, worked collectively, collaboratively together, working in sporting environments is a huge aspect of that. The community aspect, what have people lost? They've lost that sense of being a part of a team, sense of that looking at the well-being. Largely, a lot of them have been on their own for a long period of time, so it's important we look at that and address that within our curriculum. And then it's that transparent curriculum. Some pupils will have had a slightly better time than others throughout lockdown. They may have done quite a lot of fitness and exercise, so it's important we can build upon that as well. And obviously, we'll come on to fill in the gaps a little bit later. And then there's the metacognition part, without going into it in too much detail, but we can't throw all new things at them and expect them to grasp it straight away. Like we just said about the GCSE PE, we've got to take into consideration they've not played sport for so long. So it's building up slowly and plugging those gaps that they will have inevitably. And that space, giving people space and time to do that. We all learn at different rates, all the pupils do. And it's ensuring that we give them space and time in order to do that as we're going through our curriculum, however we've planned it. But there is hope. There is hope out there. And this is another paper that I've read up on and really used looking at my PE department's recovery curriculum. So this is a key aspect really of it, of this paper that I've taken out. And it's a lot of pupils have developed a lot of good skills that are transferable to PE pupils, that resilience, the flexibility, being independent. You know, a lot of pupils have started. I've set up a Strava group for our school as extracurricular clubs throughout lockdown. You know, a lot of pupils have been going out doing a lot of mountain biking, running, walking with families and friends and so on when they could. And that's important to build upon that, but also not forgetting, like I mentioned, about plugging those gaps in terms of those pupils that have not done a lot of exercise and not had the opportunities to get out and, you know, do exercise at all. So in linking that really to PE, because that's obviously a little bit whole school, is, you know, a lot of pupils will have just had PE with Joe Wicks. So it's important to remember the other parts that, you know, they really have missed out on. I've mentioned that interaction with friends, games and activities. The fact that, you know, that feedback from the expert, us as PE experts, feedback so they can develop and progress. And then looking at those targets and that working collaboratively, looking at teamwork, all those different aspects, and then working in different environments. So a lot of pupils have not been outside the house, or they might have walked to the local park and back or something like that for the last 3 or 4 months. You know, getting them back on a field, in a sports hall, in a swimming pool, if you're lucky enough to have one of those. And then it's that teamwork and connection and working with friends. And then also it's that skill development. So those motor skills, obviously playing badminton, playing handball, football, table tennis, that they haven't done. I actually taught year 8s this week on the field athletics, and they were elated because they've never actually even been on the school field, and it just sunk how year 8s have never even held a cricket bat. And it's now obviously time we need to catch that up and support them, obviously, to make that progress that they've missed out on. So here's our PE national curriculum. You can see it's not very long-winded. Some other subjects are quite long-winded, but you can see in there all the different aspects. This is just Key Stage 3. Obviously, Key Stage 3 is even slightly shorter. It's how we can implement that and use that within our curriculum. This is something that I've looked at linking to the 3 I's. So you'll know that the quality of education now is 50% of the overall judgment for a school. So as a middle leader, as practitioners in your subject, it's really important we understand these 3 major aspects. So what is your intent? What do you want to do? I got together with my department, which is a blank piece of paper. What do we want the pupils to achieve when they leave our school in PE, whether it be if they do GCSE PE or not? We came up with a sort of mantra. We want them all to be secure in PE and understanding in order to have and go on to have a healthy, active lifestyle. That's our main aspects. Then we look at the implementation of how we're going to do that, and then obviously the impact afterwards. So the 3 aspects that I really think align those, obviously the curriculum aspects, huge, which we talked about, but it has to link in the pedagogy, your teaching, learning, and then your assessment. You have to look at all 3, which is massive. But in order to get it right, I do think you have to look at all 3 and then obviously link them all together really well. So how have I done that? I've read another book, which you can have a look at, and then I've developed it from there. So looking at the 7 key principles of good curriculum design, so making it rigorous, coherent, relevant, focused, appropriate. Everyone's got different demographics in their school. I had Mitch say before he's got 5 hours at Key Stage 3. You know, my school, unfortunately, I have 1 hour a week at the present for Key Stage 3. So it's how I could get the best out of those pupils in that time, and every school will be different, but making it as broad and as balanced as possible is obviously our aim. So I've taken those 7 key steps and I made into my own 7 key steps, which I've done with my department, and it's been shared, you know, across school, which has been really successful. So that first one, looking at your PE statement, your curriculum statement, you know, try and avoid those wordy statements, but what do you want them to achieve? If an Ofsted inspector comes in, you get one of those deep dives, they will ask you that, you'll go through it and they'll expect to see it. So what specifications do you teach Key Stage 4? Why? What subject knowledge and skills do you want them to learn? Do you deliver the full national curriculum? When I first did this, I actually realised, no fault of our own, but we didn't actually deliver dance at all. So we've had to redesign our curriculum and develop dance. Luckily, we've got a dance specialist in our department, so that's made life easier. But it's just in terms of time-wise, setting that department, the curriculum out, so the department obviously can teach the full national curriculum. And then looking at the starting points and end points. So, there's a solid consensus in there. Does pupil A, if they get taught by myself and then they switch classes, do they have the same diet? And it's making sure that it is robust, so it's fair. So they go through Key Stage 3 and 4, they have that same curriculum content. And how do you address those gaps? So, like I mentioned, recovery, how are we going to address those gaps? It's really, you need to think about that. And then do we visit prior learning? As someone mentioned before about retrieval and so on. Do you visit prior learning? Some pupils will have played a lot of sport before coming to secondary school. Some will have played none. So how are you going to look at that prior knowledge and build upon that? Looking at that progress and their starting point is obviously vital. And then, is your curriculum broad and balanced? There's a lot out there at the moment about, do you have a 3-year Key Stage 3 or a 3-year Key Stage 4? When do you start GCSE PE? Why do you choose to do that? Is your curriculum ambitious? Is it ambitious for everybody? Can all pupils, PP, send EAL students? Do they all have the same ambitions, or is it reduced curriculum? Why do you do that? Or do you just differentiate via task and outcome? These are the questions you need to ask when planning your curriculum for your intent and implementation. That cultural capital, the key vocabulary. Do you have disciplinary literacy? This is something that my whole school are doing at the moment. We're looking at literacy within your domain, your subject, and it's really important to look at those keywords and aspects. I think we mentioned this a bit earlier, looking at obviously how we drip feed keywords and terms, components of fitness and so on into our lessons, which is important. And then making it coherent. So is it sequenced? Does it build upon the prior knowledge? Do you drip feed back in and go back to aspects, or do you just teach something and leave it? When you're teaching how to hold a badminton racket, do you recap that again next time, or do you just move on very quickly? These are all questions you need to look into, and that links to your retrieval. How do you do that within your lessons? And ask yourself the question, why am I teaching this? Why am I teaching this now? That's important when looking at obviously planning the curriculum as well. And then that links into the main tasks. Number 6, what are the main tasks? Do all the pupils have the secure components of learning in order to achieve those main tasks? And this is something that is really difficult, because you've got to look at, you're looking at developing all the pupils, like my school mantra is making sure you can go on and have a healthy, active lifestyle, where you really focus on that elite performance. And every school will be different, and you'll have loads of different pupils that do different aspects. So it's making sure, obviously, you discuss these elements and make sure they're both parts of your curriculum, if that is what it is. And then largely that brings us on to that number 7, which is the assessment. Is it formative, summative? Is it consistent when you do that? Do you have the same tasks? Do you all assess summatively, obviously at the end of every lesson? Do you all by question and answer? Do you look at formative assessment in terms of your data drops of your school? Do you have a set task you do? These are all things that will have to come into your curriculum. And then again, how do you address those misconceptions? So the misconceptions that you'll have had inevitably throughout lockdown, what have they missed, and how are you going to develop and look at those? So curriculum maps, these are some of colleagues and people have shared on Twitter and so on. I've had a look at these, I'm sure everyone else has, and it's then looking at building upon year 7, year 8, year 9, 10, 11. If you have a Key Stage 5, how are you going to develop that and build upon that? I've taken these and I've actually developed something slightly different for my school and myself. The one on the right is about GCSE PE. So obviously we're looking at retrieval and sequencing. So when I teach paper 1 and paper 2 simultaneously, and they build upon their knowledge and understanding. So you don't teach one aspect and leave it, you always come back to it next time, and it's that low stakes aspect that's fed in there. And obviously same with the practical element as well. And then on the left, Key Stage 4, we really pin down what is the knowledge and skills we want them to learn, and that progressively gets built upon throughout the Key Stage 3 and 4. And then just some additional reading, really, that I think is quite important, because it is such a large aspect. Like I mentioned, it's 50% of any Ofsted inspection now, and it's you've got the walkthroughs, Tom Sherrington, that's really helped, the retrieval, Kate Jones, and there's other aspects out there. The PE School have got a curriculum design out there. I use, looking at assessment, the U-Sport Trust, or we've discussed a couple today, which are really useful. Just lots of things out there you can read. But if you do have any other questions and I can help a little bit more, obviously you can find myself at Twitter, Scott_Lowy. I'm happy to help as much as I possibly can.
Thank you so much, Scott. I've actually been doing some work on the 3 I's at the moment, and looking across curriculum across the school and looking at impact. And it's not a summative construct, making sure that we have, oh, my camera's gone, the sun's shining across. Making sure that we have those endpoints throughout. So the key things that you're talking about there around, cultural capital, around the sequencing, around retrieval, looking at our long-term memory, about students knowing more, learning more, remembering more. It's really, really important. Everything you were saying there in terms of from a head of department's perspective, I think that was absolutely awesome. And there was so much to take away and so much to think about in terms of your department and your curriculum to make sure that it's as effective as possible.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No problem. I'm going to try and move my camera a little bit. There we go. Back into focus. Cool. Thank you so much, Scott. We're going to hear from Sabrina now at Teacher Love Stationery.
Hi, Adam, thank you. Hi, and thank you for having me here, and hi to the participants. So so my name's Sabrina, and my husband and I are both science teachers, and we run a small business from home called Teachers Love Stationery Club. The reason we started up was because we both have subscriptions to services and boxes that you can already get, and we really enjoyed receiving them, opening them. It's kind of like getting a little present to yourself. So I started looking into stationery subscription boxes, and actually some of them weren't really aimed at teachers. They had a lot of sort of extra bits, or they seemed quite expensive for what they were, or they tended to have things like key rings and extras that I didn't necessarily need. So we actually decided to start our own subscription box service up, and I'd like to show you some of our pass boxes, some of our stickers, and some of our shop products now. So I'm just going to adjust my camera. First of all, this is the size of our box. It's roughly A4, and it's 2.5 centimeters, 2 centimeters thick. So it will fit through a standard post box. So if you subscribe and you're at school, you won't have to be at home to get this. It'll just go straight through your door. And I'm just going to move down. So this is our box from November 2020. What happens is you get home, your box is here waiting for you on the doormat. You open up your tissue paper, and inside we have all these lovely treats for you. So first of all, in November's box, the theme was fireworks night. I have this black notebook, lined paper. So that's great just for general note taking or for keeping an eye on things. And a black post-it note pack. And you're probably thinking, well, you can't really write on black, but we included these gorgeous glittery gel pens which write on any colour paper, including black, of course. We also included some reward stickers. So these ones say Superstar on them, and these ones were blank, so you can put your own reward message on. And we also had a little bag, including a little treat for you, some popping candy, so it's like fireworks in your mouth, an apple and cinnamon tea bag for you to warm up, because obviously November's super cold, some silvered fireworks washi tape, and a washi tape cutter which just clips on and then you tear it off your washi tape. So that's always really popular for using on whiteboards if you want to section off a whiteboard in your classroom, or if you want to use it to decorate your teacher planner. Another popular box has been this month's April box, which is the theme was Bluebell Woods. And again, we've got the tissue paper. And inside this month's box, we had some Bluebell themed post-it notes, an exclusive desk pad with a to-do list and some notes on weekly priorities, different sections to keep you organised for the week. 2 black free flow ink gel pens. And these were really popular. These are erasable highlighters. So there's a blue one and a purple one. And if you highlight something or you make a mistake, you can use the other end to erase the mistake that you've made. A Faber-Castell branded mechanical pencil with a retractable eraser on one end. And another retractable eraser because they're just useful. So that's how that one works. And in the little organza bag this month, because it was Easter time, we included 4 Easter egg chocolates, a little happy Easter card, 4 little chocolates, oops, there. A lovely little pin, because everyone loves a little pin on their lanyard. So it's a little Bluebell pin. That's exclusive to Teachers Love Stationery Club. and some refills for the mechanical pencil that was in your box. And lastly, reward stickers. So we have "I'm so proud of you for," and then you can fill whatever you want on there. And we had great teamwork, brilliant work, and super perseverance. Some of the other items that we have available, apart from our monthly, bi-monthly, and quarterly subscription boxes, are reward stickers. So we've made some today for the PE icons. Oh, sorry, hold on. There we go. So I've put, and this one is awesome knowledge with a whistle. So I quite like this one for if you've got a non-participant pupil in your PE lesson and they might be refereeing or they might be skills coaching other pupils. And we've got, here we go, great teamwork, superb skills for if they're doing skills work, and star of the match for when you do have a little match maybe at the end of each lesson or at the end of a sequence of learning, and you can give those to pupils for whatever reason, whatever they've done nice. So there's some examples of our reward stickers. They're not just available in our boxes, they are available in our online shop. And other items in our online shop include, we can do personalised tote bags, that's glittery but you can't quite see. Heat press water bottles with your choice of image on. Notebooks, personalised as well. And we also do plain water bottles with just your name on. So yeah, there's a selection of the things that we do. Please do head over to our website and have a look. The discount code for today is PEicons. So if you subscribe using that code, you'll get a discount off your first box. And I do have a slide here with all of our details on it.
Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Thank you.
I like that you're just sitting next to your stock cupboard on the sofa. You've got everything with you to show us. Thank you so much for sponsoring the event. Much appreciated.
Lovely.
Teachers love stationery.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Cheers, Sabrina. Cool. That is the end of the event. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in. I must say a massive thank you to the speakers. So to Daniel Grimrod at the start, Mitch Stepien, Jodie Dempster, and Scott Lowe, sorry. Thank you so much. That was really fantastic stuff. And a massive thank you to the sponsors as well. So Pupil Progress, Wellbe, and Sabrina from Teachers Love Stationery. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you haven't managed to tune in, the recording is going to be available. That was Teachmeet PE Icons. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great summer term.